Geeky Science segment, rather. And Rolf Skar is with us. He's with Greenpeace, greenpeace.org, a Greenpeace forest campaigner. Hey, Rolf, welcome to the show.
Hey, Tom, glad to be here.
Great to have you with us. In fact, for those of you who are watching our video stream, Rolf is coming in by Skype, and so you can see him. And how you doing, Rolf?
Doing well today.
There's a fascinating article in Science. Science is the journal of the AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and pretty much anybody who's a solid, real scientist subscribes to it. And it's the top of the hill to get published in Science. It's very, very difficult to get published there. It's solid peer review that is talking about the forest fires that we're seeing out west. Tell me about this.
Yeah, the science has been mounting now for years, showing that there's a direct correlation between hotter, drier summers, earlier snow melt, and more severe, more dangerous fires. So on the top level, this makes sense to an elementary school kid that if you have hotter, drier weather, it's a lot easier for fires to start and spread. But climate and weather are complicated phenomena, and scientists are now drilling down and showing the connections between these sort of hotter, drier conditions, and then the phenomenon of climate change, which is a bit more abstract and harder for people to understand.
Yeah, I've been arguing for some time that instead of calling it climate change, we should call it atmospheric deterioration, because even climate change
that's a good point.
Yeah, sounds kind of passive, like big deal, global warming. Oh yeah, great. In the winter I'll be able to have a more comfortable climate, that kind of thing. But this is really what we're talking about here, is the deterioration of our atmosphere. For a long time, the debate in the United States, or the discussion in the United States with regard to climate change, scientists were always very, very careful to couch their language around, we can't see the effects of this yet. You can't attribute, like New Orleans, for example. Everybody was backpedaling on saying whether Katrina was caused by global climate change or atmospheric deterioration. Now it seems scientists are willing to say more than they were before.
Yeah, that's true. Now, you can't blame a given fire like the ones that have been in Southern California on climate change or even weather alone. For example, there's now an arson investigation into one of those significant fires. So, of course, there's ignition, there's weather patterns, there's terrain, there's a variety of factors that feed into a large phenomenon like a large wildland fire. But what scientists are starting to say, and which is becoming more and more clear and sort of unavoidable, is that as climate change and global warming or climate deterioration, as you call it, Tom, takes hold, and as we forecast into the future, we can be more and more confident that we're going to see more conditions that will lead to more larger fires. That's sort of an inevitable truth when we look at the evidence there. And so, of course, that begs the question about action. Shouldn't we be doing something now to make sure that in 2050 our grandkids aren't dealing with even more extreme, larger, and more dangerous fires?
Right. So, Rolf Skar with greenpeace.org, what is Greenpeace recommending?
Well, Greenpeace is recommending that in addition to the preventative measures and the emergency measures that happen on the ground every time a fire hit, that we look to things like fire-safe developments, that homeowners take responsibility for their homes and the areas around them, that we remove unneeded roads so that sources of ignition, sparks, or even deliberate arson can be minimized, that we invest in prescribed burning and other treatments that may help fire-dependent ecosystems get more into a natural rhythm with fires. But more importantly, the preventative measure that's not really being discussed all that much in the context of these fires is that the U.S., and in particular President Obama, should stand up, provide some real leadership, and show to the international community that we are ready to take the threat of global warming seriously, and that we're ready to cut our emissions here at home, as well as invest in climate-friendly technologies and development overseas.
The Prime Minister of Japan, the newly elected Prime Minister of Japan, who displaced the Liberal Party, which was actually the Conservative Party, which had been ruling Japan for 50 years, and he is, because the word liberal means something different in Europe and Japan than it does here. We refer to people with that label as conservatives. He has come out and said that even though the official position of the previous government was that Japan was going to dial back by 8% their emissions, that he's going to go for the 20%, the full 20%. And this is like making big headlines. Several big stories about it in the Financial Times over the last couple of days. Do you think that, what do you see happening, and we've got about a half a minute left here, Rolf, what do you see happening in Copenhagen in December when this is really all going to come together?
Well, right now, because the U.S. has failed to provide leadership, the U.S. Congress in particular has acted like a lead balloon on this issue, and the U.S. has put out a target of 4%, which has been full of loopholes and other get-out-free jail cards for industry. The climate talks are at risk. Japan has taken a good first step forward. If the U.S. steps up and gets to the 25 to 40% reduction range by 2020 that scientists have said we need to get to in order to have a reasonable chance of stopping climate change, then the talks can be back on track.
Yeah, and let us not forget 350 parts per million. We've got to get our carbon dioxide right now is around 385. We've got to get it down to 350. Rolf Skar, Greenpeace.org. Thanks, Rolf.
Thanks, Thom.
Great to have you with us.